Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to those of you that were here for last week's session. If you had another representative, or perhaps this is your first session, welcome. If you haven't done so, please rename yourself to your name and the organization you're representing. If you do not know how to do that, you just hover over your little picture and three little dots will come up, and in the menu, the drop-down menu from there, it'll say rename, and you'll rename yourself. Just another couple of housekeeping things. As a lot of you know, last week that we're here, I was helping manage the chat because I wasn't a presenter, so I was answering things real time and stuff. Today, my coworkers will be managing the chat too, trying to get you guys answers real time. If you do have a question, and you can put it in the chat, and if they don't get to it, they will be gathering it for me to answer it at the end of the session and stuff. So we'll crank through all the material, and I'll keep the chat open the best I can too, in case there's anything that's very prevalent at the time of the slide and stuff. So feel free to answer to each other. That was a big thing last week. One that I remember was cybersecurity insurance, and there was a lot of banter back and forth. Hey, does anybody know a good broker? Do you know where I can get this? And there was all kinds of going back and forth. Hey, try so-and-so, here's their email. So please feel free to go back and forth with each other and share resources. Again, the reason that we do this is you all have specific missions here in our county, and by you being able to do that mission to the best of your ability, it makes our county better. Whether it is therapy for horses or animals, or for someone going through cancer treatment or veteran services, all that you guys do makes our county better. So by lifting each other up, we lift our county up. So it's super, super important to leverage each other with that. So today, last week we talked all about governance and keeping that organization on the straight and narrow through good governance, fiduciary oversight, and stuff like that. Today we're going to get more into the organizational structure of things and stuff. So we will again hit on leadership a little bit, because one of those pieces of your structure should be either a board of directors or a cabinet, and then we'll get down into other entities within your organization that basically help you get the work done, different committees. So I'm going to share my screen and we will get going. There will be some polls again this week. They're pretty obvious whenever they pop up. You will see that happen, and you'll be able to take them, and we will utilize those. So again, we're here for organizational basics this week. Basically, we'll reiterate the course objectives, talk about why structure is important. It's a lot of people put it in place without really realizing, I have to do it. Well, why are you doing it? Let's talk about that for a few minutes. We're going to talk about some common structures, definitely the ones that we recommend for starting organizations, and then some stuff that can, as you grow, that can be added onto that structure. Reporting. So once you have that restructure set up, how do you communicate? How do you talk? And then I took these from the very first intro class. We actually asked you guys in that intro class we did back in November, what else do you want to see in this class? And everybody said, we'd like a little bit more meat around succession planning, motivation, versatility, and staff versus committee. So I'm going to tackle those 4 things that you guys gave me back in November, and hopefully give you a little bit around that. Resources again that you can tap and share with your organization. A few of them from last week will be carried over, but I added a really good new one this week from the Stanford Law School for you guys that you can tap, and then we'll go into Q&A. So again, the course objectives for this one is we're going to go over committee development and structure, committee objectives, roles and responsibilities, and reporting requirements. That roles and responsibilities is a big thing, not only so your committee knows what it's doing at the time, but also when you're out courting someone to be on a committee, by being able to provide them what their role is and what they're going to be responsible for is a big deal, so they know what they're signing up for, rather than just saying, hey, can you join my finance committee? So giving them that framework of what they're signing up for, goes a long way, not only with, courting that person, but onboarding them so they understand their role and what they're supposed to do and understand what they don't have to do. Because it is overwhelming sometimes to be asked to join an organization. We'll talk about succession planning, especially including diversification. A lot of times, and I am definitely one who is guilty of this, a warm body to fill a chair, but is that ultimately the right thing for my mission to be successful? What am I lacking in my organization, and how do I go about getting that? So I have some tips and tricks of some places to consider or go-tos if you are looking for something particular for your board, a particular role you need filled or a particular skill set. So those will be our objectives for today. I went forward. So why is organization important? We talked about this a lot last week. A lot of us in this county are in this limbo land of we're a working board, but we're also in the governing space. We're right smack in the middle of it. That working board is one who does all those administrative tasks. Maybe you don't have a very big staff or no staff at all and stuff. So knowing who is doing what and to get that work done and rolling up your sleeves is really, really important. Governing boards is where you're moving into more oversight of a staff and a mission, but so many of our organizations, and we saw this in the polls last week, you're kind of in the middle of this. You're doing both of these things. You are governing and you are running your organization. Even if you have one or two staff, a lot of times the lift is still quite big where you're rolling up your sleeves. So having structure around this, so you know what your lane is and what your work is, will make you most effective and most efficient. Oh, Chris, was that number 4? My little slide things went away, actually. Chris, I think I have a poll here. If you could please throw it up. Thank you. And this is kind of a repeat from last week, but I wanted to make a more definitive line. If you are 100% working board, go ahead and mark that. If you're confident that you are a governing board, go ahead and mark that. Or if you're something else and that you're something else, go ahead and mark that. I'm making you guys draw a little bit more definitive line this week. I know Bill discussed a lot of different boards last week, but I'm making you more commit because this is more standard for El Dorado County, what we see here. So we'll give this just a minute or two here, and just like I said, I'm starting to see these numbers come in, and working board is definitely up there. Looks like about everybody's in. Awesome. Chris, if you can go ahead and close that poll and share the results. Basically, what it is we landed at about 60% of a working board and stuff. We have about 20% that is an other and about 20% that is a governing. This is very, very common and stuff, especially we've heard this data point before. El Dorado County has more nonprofits per capita than any other county in the state, which is a good thing because it means we're getting a lot of wonderful things done for our people, but it also means that we are stretching the people that do the work by a lot. I bet if I actually had a poll asking how many of you serve on more than one board, I bet the number would be pretty high. As far as I can see Susan shaking her head, Zito, yes. I myself sit on 5, and as soon as my daughter graduates, I'll be able to drop 1 or 2, but then I'm going to pick up at least 1 or 2 more for my freshman son and stuff. So it does happen, and that's how it happens in our county. A lot of us are working, and we keep going. I got to let my computer catch up. Okay, so I kind of already spoke to this. Why is structure important? Basically, it's going to govern your workflow. If you have good structure and you have good documentation about roles and responsibilities, you're going to have really good clarity around who's responsible for what tasks, and who's responsible for what decisions as well, and stuff, because there's some things that you can allow to happen at a committee level. There's other things that you want to happen more at an executive level. So having that decision-making tree and having those tasks outlined is super important. Obviously, if everybody knows what tasks they're doing and who's in charge of that decision, it allows you to be efficient. It allows you to focus your time and your energy on those tasks that you are assigned to and not those things that you aren't assigned to and stuff. So keeping those lanes, and you'll see me speak to that a little bit more as we go forward, keeping those lanes clean and clear is super important in efficiency. And then having that structure as well. I mean, good old org charts basically give you a reporting structure. And if you use your structure setup in that manner, reporting and communications can be very, very good and stuff. You can basically get things done in meetings and have reports and not have to have a lot of extra side meetings. And this is where checks and balances come in as well, if you know your structure. This is where if you have an audit committee, that's one of your checks and balances for your fiduciary. So that's why organizational structure is quite important. So this is kind of our generic, when you're starting an organization, this is our initial organizational layout that we'll generally suggest for a group. Obviously, you're going to have some kind of leadership body. It could be an executive committee. It could be a board. It could be a cabinet. People always ask me about these definitions. It's not a hard and fast rule, but generally you'll see the term board used for a true 501c3. Somebody that has their nonprofit tax identification. Partially why that is important is because whenever you file for your 501c3, you actually put who is your president, who is your treasurer, and who is your secretary. Those are the three that you must have to get your 501c3. And then you'll see the words cabinet and executive committee used for possibly the non-501c3s. There's not a hard and fast rule. That's just generally what is seen. So that'll be your leadership group that will hold those officers of the organization. And this will go into their roles and responsibilities. The other four, at least to start, that we generally recommend is marketing or communications, or you'll hear it called Marcom. This is one who does all kinds of communications, whether it's your social media or whether it's they will work hand in hand with development on a fundraising letter, and any collateral, any press releases or things like that, website development. This is where your message gets out there. This is your voice for that. The second committee over, which is probably the big one for all of us, and the one that's hardest to get people to commit to, is development. This would include basically all of your routes of garnering funds for your organization, whether it's a fundraising event, grant writing, sponsorships, membership models, and stuff. This is one that you will see in my box below that I say, as you get bigger, this is one that you might wind up having subcommittees in as far as development goes. You might want to break out and just have a grants committee if you are one who are constantly doing that. You may have a staff person that is your grant writer and therefore would help with this committee and be involved. So that would be our second recommendation as far as committee structure goes. The third one is finance. You do want a finance committee, even if you have a treasurer that is sitting on your leadership. Generally, a lot of times your treasurer sits on your leadership, and then they also wind up being the chair of the finance committee. And this is what helps connect those dots on that communication and stuff. But you want a finance committee. This is where your fiduciary oversight comes in. Generally, this one, I have a group that is really teeny tiny. They've only raised $3,000 to date, and they've got a $10,000 grant. They're just getting going in their first year. And I'm just like, you need two people, you need that treasurer to have a backup from a fiduciary oversight and a responsibility to your donors and stuff. So they have a very tiny finance committee. They are a very small entity right now. And as they grow and as they get more revenue streams that need watching over, they will add to it. But you want at least two persons sitting on that finance committee so you have a backup. And then the one everybody loves to join, the fourth one, program, because that's what gets the mission done. I know Krista Campbell's on here, and oh my goodness, everybody loves to do program with Ag in the Classroom. They love doing coming up with the Farm Day program for the third graders. And please don't make me go ask for money, but I will happily, open the gate and let those thousands of kiddos in. The thing is program is wonderful, and you do need people to do that, but you can't get to program without these other committees to make it happen. So program, I know, is usually the easiest one to seat and stuff, but again, getting people involved, because in order for your program to be successful, you need these other entities involved. And I mentioned down below, because people that were here last week for Bill's presentation should be very aware that he mentioned other committees. And this is, as you get bigger or you become a 501c3, you are going to want additional committees. You will want an audit committee as you get bigger. Even my small organizations, we do an internal audit, which means that we have other leadership people that audit our books that are not the treasurer and are not someone sitting on the finance committee. So we have some other leadership sit down once a year and go over the books with a fine-tooth comb and do an internal audit. As you get bigger, you may need a full-on external audit done. Human resources, as soon as you add personnel or you add staff, especially paid staff versus contracted, but even contracted is a good time to start getting into human resources, because you want to make sure that their contracts are legal and legally drawn, and that whatever you're doing there is up and on the up and up. Human resources is very good. Bylaws. Whenever you have a 501c3 and you do have bylaws, you want to look at those bylaws ever so often. I know last week a few people admitted that they have them and they probably have never looked at them, or they have not looked at them in a while. So looking at that bylaws, every other year is super important. Impact is another one that you can do. And as I mentioned, splitting up developments and stuff after the fact. So now that you guys have seen a look at kind of what committees look like, I have another poll here. Chris, if you can share it. What do you guys look like? How many committees do you have right now? Do you have one or two, where you just have leadership? Do you have 3 or 4? Do you have 5 or more? Ooh, does leadership do it all and you don't have any committees? I love the last one. We have nothing formal. We just do it when we need it and stuff. And that does happen. You put it together whenever you need it. So this one will be really interesting to see how you guys land on this one. How many committees do you have? It is kind of all, oh, wow, it's coming through fairly evenly split. Don't worry, we'll share it. I know I can see it right now. Okay, Chris, if you can stop that poll and share it, fabulous. All right, very interesting. Some people have 1 or 2. About 20% and 20%, 3 to 4 or 5 plus. Look at that, our leadership does it all, 25% of you. Kudos to you, but we got to help you because we don't want you to burn out and stuff. So even if you bring on some advisors in certain cases, that's another thought. If you don't want to go to a full committee structure, is to have some advisors to your leadership to help you guys, whether it's somebody who has some marketing experience or someone who doesn't necessarily want to sit on the board, but maybe they'll come and play in a strategic planning session to give you guys a little lift and stuff. If you're saying your leadership does it all. Nothing formal, we just pull it together, committee as needed. That's a night that's sitting at about 15%. And that happens for sure. So thank you very much for that. What an amazing split on that one. Not that I am surprised at all. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to dive into each of the committees and stuff. And again, this will be shared so you guys can, can borrow and plagiarize as you like. Generally, whenever I'm putting together a group or getting a group get off the ground, the first thing I do with them after they establish or they self-identify with which committee they feel that they would be best sitting on is we kind of go over this list of roles and responsibilities. And then the group may refine it and tweak it based on, what their organization's mission is, what size they are, do they need to add to it, do they need to detract from it, but it's a nice starting point. And then this becomes, after you do this little bit of work, and most groups can get through it in 1 or 2 sessions, after you have this is now your document to court your new people. So you want me to be on my board, on your leadership board. What does that mean? What do I do? This now becomes a living and breathing document for you guys to go out and court people with and to show them, hey, I'd like you to help. And, this is what your role and responsibility would be. So leadership. This is the one who establishes the programs, policies, and processes to support the organization and oversees its management. Basically, I'm going to use some car analogies here, and people have used this one for Bill a lot. Bill likes to use the staying in your organization's lane. This is the group that establishes what your lane is, what your mission is, and keeps your organization in their lane. If you decide you want to do a little bit of a lane shift, you want to pass some people on the freeway, this would be the group that says, we are going to do a little bit of a shift here, and we are going to pass a few cars, take on a little something else. This is the group that sets the whole tone. And I have, because it is early in the morning, I've got, Bill's gonna love this, I'm dying to see his face. So I've got a few comic strips we're gonna use with these. So my first one is, stay in your lane. Okay, this one is a silly one, but if you think about it, it's really true. Halloween has always had October. Thanksgiving has always had November, and December generally is relegated to, or Christmas is, the Christmas holidays are relegated to December. I love how December and Christmas keeps getting earlier and earlier and moving into Halloween's lane and Thanksgiving's lane. So if you think about it literally from a business standpoint, this is actually wreaks a lot of havoc with people not staying in their lanes. Now, granted, Christmas gets a little bit more revenue in their bucket and stuff, but it wreaks a lot of havoc by them not staying in their lanes. So I love this one. It's very relevant and stuff. So and I thought it was a great one because I know as soon as Halloween is over, I watch everyone complaining, there's already Christmas decorations up in Home Depot or wherever and stuff. And so I think this one is very, very relevant one to keep people in their lanes. And that's what your leadership is going to do. So again, what leadership is going to do is first they're going to define the lane. This is who creates and reviews your mission statements, your goals, who you're going to serve. So this is going to be defining what lane you are serving, what are you going to do. The next car analogy I like to use with this one is, this is the group that's going to steer and be aware of that drift light sensor. All the new cars now have that little bzz on your seat if you go off on the side of the median and stuff. Think of it as you guys are reviewing and monitoring your goals and looking at various, whether it's various indicators and stuff that you have, you are the group that is in charge of paying attention to, are you drifting? Are you doing what you're supposed to be doing? Be aware of that little buzz in your seat or that little light that flashes these days, that you are drifting out of your lane. If you start to drift, it's you away from your mission and not staying on it, you're potentially adding more work to the organization. It's where if you think it's the right thing to do, you go back to defining your lane rather than drifting. So you go back and have that discussion about your mission. It's not to say that you maybe shouldn't add it to your mission. but you should be aware of it and not just automatically take it on. You should have that discussion about that drifting that's occurring and make an educated decision. Is this something we can take on, or do we put this off until later? I have a group that's probably on here today that is just their first year. They were so excited and so passionate, and any little, I like to call them my shiny object group, and they're probably giggling because they probably know who I'm talking about. But any little shiny thing, oh, let's do this, oh, let's apply for this grant, oh, oh, let's do this, oh, did you hear about this, it's amazing, and stuff. But we really had to get them established in their lane, be aware of their drift sensors, and have them pay attention to their mission. And we were like, these are all great, let's add them to the strategic plan for later down the road, but right now let's stay in our lane so we don't burn everybody out and get our thing done. The next one is balance your tires and replace them as needed. Determine which programs are consistent with the organization's mission and monitor their effectiveness. It's a little add-on to the one above, and stuff, basically, that you want to make sure that you are doing stuff that are consistent with your mission. Missions can always be rewritten, and stuff. Generally, people will do a large overhaul of their mission, as part of, as they grow and they potentially get more money, different clients, different needs arise out of the community and stuff. You can rewrite your mission. There's a group I'm working with right now out of Cameron Park that basically, the mission is the guiding star, so to speak. They are the one that's keeping you on the straight and narrow and guiding you on your journey. So balancing those tires and replacing them as needed certainly is welcome and available to do. Leadership continued. They are the ones who are going to fill the gas tank. They're the ones that are going to review and approve the annual budget and stuff, and ensure that proper financial controls are in place. Budgets. You guys are January right now. Your budgets for this year should have been done and reviewed and put in place at the end of last year. You should not be in January right now without a budget and marching down the road, but I know it happens. So making this and putting together a calendar and to do your annual budget is super duper important, and doing it before the year starts. I'm guilty. I have sat on a board with organizations that we are in January and we still do not have a budget approved for the year. It's a slippery slope and stuff. So definitely one that the leadership needs to be in front of. Next one, follow the code of the road. Leadership is the one that is going to adhere to all the legal standards and all the ethical boundaries and duties of obedience, care, and loyalty and transparency. So this is, as Bill alluded to last week, following the code of the road. This is where your leadership should be signing a conflict of interest on an annual basis. You should have those policies and procedures in place that were alluded to last week. That is your code of the road for running this organization. The last one, I love this one. And leadership is part of what makes this car your own. You are the one that gets to do the bumper stickers, the window decals, and more. Basically, this is where you get to tell everybody what you are about through advancing your mission through communication and through your image in the community and to your stakeholders and your partners. That is part of leadership's role, is really going out there and advancing yourself in the community. Leadership is the one, unless there is staff, leadership is the one who should be hitting up Kiwanis and going out there and sharing what you're doing, or the Rotary Club, or being out there at mixers and in the community and sharing it, what that is. And Hillary alluded to this last week. A lot of times leadership isn't comfortable with this, but by giving them the elevator speech and the training to make that possible, leadership can get it done for sure. So that is leadership. Finance, oh, the dreaded finance. Finance is dreaded, but it is the most important thing. If you think about a nonprofit, you have been entrusted with the donors, with your donors' funding, or from a grant from an organization like the foundation. So this is who's going to make sure that they are financially responsible, whether it's the short-term or the long-term obligations in your organization's mission. I have another fun comic strip for this one. So your examples of this one, if we take it to the car, is finance is the one that understands not only what it takes to own the car, but all the little add-ons, because just having that car and paying for the car isn't going to make the car run. You also need insurance. You may need to loan or finance that car and make the payments. You have to register that car. You need gas for the car. You might need to maintain the car. If you think about this analogy and put it into your organization needs insurance, whether we talked about it last week, D&O, liability, that security. Your gas is your donations. Your maintenance may be a website. If you are a 501c3, you have registrations you have to do. If you're going to run a raffle, you need to register with the DOJ. So completely portable. So my little comic strip on this one is, okay, now that we've settled on the financial pies, I should mention these additional fees. Just the other night, I have an organization that's coming out of hiatus, and they were talking about everything that they need to pay for this year. And at the end of it, I said, I hate to be Debbie Downer, but don't forget about all the little extras. You guys need to get your insurance back in place. You need to pay for your PO box, all those little extras of becoming an entity. So those were super important. Click it back here. So again, as far as specific tasks, this is the group that's going to basically oversee the financial planning, your budget, even though everybody's going to give inputs into a budget, finance is the one that puts it into a nice package, whether it's short-term or a long-term. They're the ones that can see across the whole thing, are going to want to make sure that that budget balances and stuff. So they are the ones who are going to present the approved budget to your board for approval. So finance would be the ones that would draw it up with everyone's input, and they would be the presenters of it, because they present it and they know it inside and out, this will be the ones that will then monitor it all year long as you go through to tell you if you are on track or off track. They will be reviewing financial statements on a monthly basis, whether you have a bank account or you have a fund with the foundation where you're getting quarterly statements from us. So those statements generally go to your treasurer and your financial committee, and they're going to be the ones that are going to be plugging in and updating real time and tracking that bottom line and letting you know, in order to do that program, you're a little bit behind on fundraising, so we need to kick something else up, or tell development we're tracking a little bit behind, we need to turn up that knob on development to get there. Finance is generally the one as well that reviews expenditures. And usually the board of directors or your leadership will set a level of expenditure that needs to be signed off and stuff. It may be, depending on the size of your organization, an expenditure over $250, it may be $500, it may be $2,000, but finance is the one, because again, they are the fiduciary oversight that knows, kind of what level do we want to dig in and dig a little deeper as far as expenditures go. And as I mentioned in just an example a minute ago, finance is the one that is really going to work hand in hand with development as far as doing any grants. Usually grants require reports. Anybody that works with us knows that and stuff. So these two groups wind up working very much hand in hand. Development is very much aware of what finance needs. Finance is very much aware of development's needs. So super important. Finance, it just keeps going. They are going to, any assets are protected. They're going to oversee any investments. If you are with the community foundation, you may have what's called an expendable account, which kind of runs like a checking account, or you may have an endowment, which I like to call your rainy day fund, that's more invested and that there may be available to spend that comes off once a year. Your finance is the one that should be, again, overseeing those endowment investments and making sure that they are being invested wisely, that you are seeing, a good return, and should any changes be made. This is the group that's going to do any policies and procedures around fiscal. And again, we shared a bunch of those last week. If you weren't in our meeting last week and you need some fiscal policies and examples, feel free to hit us up and we'll give you our emails at the end. But this is the ones that were alluded to in last week's presentation around, accepting gifts, receipts, things like that. Those are the types of fiscal policies. legal reporting requirements to the state, federal and local levels. If you are filing your taxes, this is the group that is going to oversee all that type of stuff and make sure that it's being happening on an annual basis, as well as any other filings possibly with DOJ or the state. And the last one, sustain the committee, reserve the necessary time to recruit and train members. I have a group right now, or I have a couple of groups that are just sweating it because their treasurer is going to, she's done. She's, most of the organizations she sits on are school related and her kids have aged out. And so they are now in a panic because they did not reserve the time to start looking and recruiting and training now. So they are paying for it a little bit and they are in super scramble mode. And this person is very willing to do a transition, but because it wasn't discussed up front and it wasn't, the time wasn't made for this, it is now in a full-on scramble mode. So that would be finance. Again, I will share, this will all get shared and you guys can take these back to your finance as needed. Communications committee, the fun, this is your, bumper stickers, your horn, your lights, make sure everything's working and stuff. So people know who you are. They're going to support your this is the group that's going to do all of your marketing, ensuring that it's consistent with the mission, your messaging, your fundraising, your awareness, your branding and stuff. One of the first things usually a communications committee does is they come up with the logo. This is how people recognize you in the community. This is a big deal and stuff. I can look at, there are logos here in this community or color schemes that I know exactly who that organization is and stuff. And you don't think it's a big deal, but it is. Even if you think about everyday branding in our advertising world. So my fun one on this one is the communications committee they're the ones that make sure your lights are all working and your horn is working so you can be seen and heard. And they're the ones that make the car your own and drive that car around. So let's see my fun one on this one. So this one's Grimmy, who I love. Now please, Grimmy, just stay put while I run into the store. And then he starts honking the horn. And he basically gets in trouble because he was walking and not running. So you want to make sure that your horn is heard in our community, that people know you are there, whether they are people who are clients that are getting your services or donors that are going to support you in your mission. So this is the group that's going to develop and implement your marketing, your branding, your communication plans and stuff. They're the ones who are going to help build your story to drive new donors, volunteers, or community partnerships. I cannot tell you how important, and Chris will get into this whenever he does his marketing and communications one here in a couple of weeks. The story is so incredibly important. And getting those testimonials from persons who have been beneficiaries of your mission statement. I almost had tears around Christmas time of a group that a group that's been around for about a year and a half, and I got their letter this year, and it opened up with a beautiful story about a client that was served by them, and that was absolutely amazing. And did I write a check? Heck yeah, I did, and stuff. So making it real for people, that's what communications is all about, making your mission real and getting it to the people. This is the group that's going to leverage the different communication avenues, whether it's web, electronic, social media, Facebook, Twitter, a newsletter, public relations, all this kind of stuff. This is one that I know some of our organizations struggle with. And we are here. A lot of people are like, I don't use Facebook. I don't use LinkedIn. I don't use Instagram. The thing is El Dorado County does continue to grow in size and in age. And if you want to get to that next gen group or those millennials, you have to use these other avenues to get there. It is one thing that makes El Dorado County very, very beautiful is we have a demographic that still loves that postcard on their refrigerator. but we have a demographic that is just hit me up on Instagram, hit me up on Facebook. That's the way I roll and stuff. So you've got to be able to broaden your communication plan to support this growing demographic of El Dorado County and stuff, and to reach that group and stuff, because so many of your next finance persons who might be for your finance committee is probably a next gen or a millennial. And I know when Chris gives his talk, he is going to talk about those different streams. So that one will be a super important one. If you are not comfortable or familiar with what avenues work best for these different Gen Y, Gen Z, Gen X, he will speak to that. But this is super important, especially in your communications committee. This is the group that will identify key speaking engagements to help you guys market your brand and your mission. We have so many incredible organizations, service organizations, and you know, our chambers of commerces and stuff here in our community. You know, definitely getting out there and speaking is an amazing thing to do. Again, I'm going to end every single one of these committees with your role on this committee is to sustain the committee, reserve the necessary time to recruit and train the members to backfill this group when it's needed. So again, this one will be blown up big in a couple of weeks with Chris Ringness and his marketing and communications one. So if you do not have someone signed up for it, make sure you get signed up for it. Okay. The one that, other than finance, probably the second scariest committee, the development committee. This is the group that is going to be that philanthropic and fund development arm. This is the money. This is where how do you go about, you got that car, you want to buy it, how are you going to afford and pay for that car along the way? Whether you're using Gas Buddy to find the best price of gas, you know, how are you going to make this happen? How are you going to get the funds? And we have Kathy Haven and Lois Roberts, who are next up in our group of classes, that they are going to go after the things to consider, the different avenues that you can develop funding, what to think about and stuff. But this is the committee that would dig into that. All right, let's see my fun little one for this one. Ah, I love this one. Gas, steady, here he comes. Wait for it before we increase the cost of gas. Development is the one that is staying on top of the cost of everything, along with the finance partnership, and then figuring out what you can afford. So again, this one is one that's going to be partnered a lot. The first bullet is they're going to partner with the board to assure that, you know, expectations around fund development. I know last week when we did the poll on this one, board members hate to ask for money. Well, the development committee, along with communications, is the one that's going to develop those elevator speeches to get that board comfortable. It is not that board members, necessarily that board members' responsibility to go out and give that elevator speech. This is the group that's going to support them in making that happen. And this is the group that will, if you decide to be a giving board, which again, we do highly recommend, even if it's $5, that your board is a giving board. This is the group that would set that policy for you being a giving board. I know last week I mentioned this in the chat, a giving board is very, very important. I know that especially out of the Sacramento Region Foundation, which a lot, by the way, El Dorado County is part of the Sacramento region. So if you're ever looking for grants, make sure you look at them too. But on their grant applications, on almost all of them I have done, and I may even dare to say every single application I've ever done through Sac County region, it asks if you are a giving board. It doesn't ask how much. It just wants to know that you are 100% giving. So ethically, if it's $5 and every board member gave $5, you are a giving board. So that's super important. Again, they're going to basically develop what your goals are going to be from a budget. So the development, you know, back in October, November, when you're developing your budget, this is the group that says, I think we can raise 10,000 in grants or 20,000 in grants. This is how we're going to do it. I think we can do a mailing campaign around the Christmas time. You know, generally in the past, we've gotten this, or I think we can get this. And they're the ones that commit to raising those funds that go into that budget to balance you out. And then they are going to track that throughout the year along with the finance committee to make sure that that happens. Again, this is one that's going to work closely with communications as well, again, to implement those strategies. This is the one that's really looking forward, and this is where Kathy and Lois's presentation is going to come in. They're going to start looking forward to see your development plans, you know, long term too, that you have a good mix of strategies, because we all saw it. When COVID hit, those organizations that depended on that single big fundraiser were in a world of hurt when COVID hit. And because they hadn't diversified their development streams, we saw various organizations fold because they had depended on everybody coming to that one event and a few regular donors. You really need to really come up with a good mix of strategies to make sure that you can support yourself in the long term and grow yourself. A good example, that one that had been looking long term is Ag in the Classroom, which Krista Campbell is here today. They'd always been very donor based, had an event every year, but they always had out in the future that they wanted to develop a membership type thing for teachers that came with curriculum and stuff. So that one's always been one they had been marching to, and now they have folded that in and is now available. So that is now another revenue stream that they have folded into their mix. So continually looking forward and strategizing what is right to keep you moving forward. They're going to make sure that everybody is educated, like we said, as far as fund development. This is the group that will, you know, remind you as far as different gifting, how it all works and stuff. And they will help you direct that, be able to, again, help that board articulate that need to specific audiences and make it happen. This is the group that's going to help you nurture your culture of philanthropy throughout the organization. This is a group that is, along with marketing, will make sure that your donors are acknowledged in a timely manner and are respected and honored. So the development committee is usually one that decides, puts in some framework or policy around donor thank yous. I know at an organization that I was in, we basically said, if it's this amount, if it's a first-time donor, we always sent them a written thank you and stuff. And then from there on out, depending on the amounts, you know, they would get, they would get the standard form letter. If it was a certain amount, then they would get a handwritten note from the board president. If it was another level, they would get a call from a board member. So this is the group that helps you strategize. How are you going to thank people? Oh, there's my last bullet again. As a committee, you must sustain the committee. Reserve the necessary time to recruit and train. Always stay in front of keeping your committee alive and thriving. Program. I saved the fun one for last. So this is the group that gets to run the programs that deliver your mission. So this is your programmatic arm. They still have financial responsibilities and stuff because obviously they've been given a budget that they have to operate in. So they need to do so accordingly in a responsible manner by balancing that budget and making sure that, that they're adhering to what has been allowed for the program. This one, I basically said, this is the group that keeps the engine running. And they keep it tuned. So on this one, you want to make sure that check engine light, if it comes on, program needs to alert if something isn't working well in program. So again, they're going to oversee the programmatic arm. So they're going to do, any budget, any personnel, anything like that. Let them, these are the experts that know it in and out. This is the one, because everybody loves program. This is the one where I see committees like to overlap and to get in each other's spaces and stuff. This is the one because everybody loves what's doing the mission Everybody wants to be involved with developing program. You can still be involved from a decision standpoint, like for instance, at the leadership level, if program needs something bought off, they're going to present it up to leadership and leadership can give them feedback. But at the end of the day, you have put program in place to do program because they are the best people to do the job. So this is one where a lot of people like to give their 2 cents and stuff, whether they sit on that committee or not. And this is the one where we see a lot of overlap happening in roles and responsibility because we all love program. That's what develops our mission and stuff. But you also want to be careful because by giving all those 2 cents and 5 cents, you're giving program a lot of extra work and stuff. So you definitely want to have very clear expectations as far as communication when it comes in and out of program. Program is in charge of monitoring and assessing their existing programs. So this is developing success metrics and measuring them and stuff. Program would be the one to do that and reporting those up and out to leadership on a regular basis. They are the ones who are going to be communicating with communications. Program is the one who will help you find that person who's going to sell that story or the pictures or the quotes and stuff. So they can help you facilitate that and get that done. This is the group that also, whenever they see a need, maybe a different direction or an add-on to a program that is needed to fulfill the mission or the strategic plan, this is the one who's going to bring it up to leadership and stuff and get it done. But this is really your boots on the ground, is your program committee. And again, my last bullet, sustain the committee. Make sure you always know who's coming next and making sure that that is all about. So now that you guys have seen all these, Chris, I have a poll. Now that you've seen these frameworks, how are you feeling about your organization? Do you feel that you're a well-oiled machine and running well? Do you feel that you have all of these in some form and maybe you just need a little tweaking? Maybe your organization has a flat, you need a little bit of a change going on. You could see where one of these would fit well, or you are in the service bay and you need a serious overhaul, engine replace. This is a great time of the year, honestly, guys, in January, as you're having these discussions, you're just getting going. Usually the January board meeting is a nice time to actually just have a nice level set as you set forward to the year. So if you guys have some roles and responsibilities and you want to tweak them or add to them with some of these or have a discussion, January is a great time to do it because then it sets the tone for everyone. It helps establish those lines of communication. Awesome. Chris, if you want to end this one. I love it. Not too bad, you guys. 41% feel that you have all of these in some form. You probably just need a little tweaking and stuff. We have a few that definitely feel well-oiled machine and running well. I could probably guess who those are. And then looks like we have about 45% that could use some help with these and stuff, whether you have a change, you're missing something and you feel like you could need it, or if you need an overhaul completely. And, definitely as Bill alluded to, we're definitely in the space of, we could possibly be available to come and, do some conversations, look at structures and help you guys out with this. And don't worry, I'm going to give you some tips and tricks as far as if you want to implement one of these and you don't have it, how you get people to do it. So thank you, Chris. So we will close this one down, get my thing to move forward. All right, reporting. Basically, if you follow what Bill and Hillary did last week as far as good governance practices, especially whenever it comes to agendas and minutes, good governance practices equals good reporting. And stuff. If you have that leadership committee up top, whether it's a cabinet or it's a board, generally, like I said, I like to do on that leadership committee, I like to have at least one person from those subcommittees. And then they become the report out structure and stuff. So in every agenda, and I know that Hillary had this last week in the agenda example, other than all the businesses, you allow time for reports from, I mean, generally all of us always do a finance report, but allow time for program to report, allow time for development to report, and allow time for communications to report. This will allow it to happen in the meeting for them to get any real-time feedback in your leadership meeting. And then if you have that person sitting there that can sit on both, then they can take those directions or those suggestions back down into the committee, and it allows it to flow really, really nice. So again, that second bullet that I said, agendas, those committee reports, having those on there is super, super important. The other thing, and I actually have a group that's very guilty of this right now, timely minutes are super important. I have a group that doesn't send out the minutes until right before the next meeting. Well, the action items that were captured in that meeting a month ago, things that were decisions that were needed to be done or work that needs to be done. I mean, yeah, some of us are really good about taking notes. I know this group is, but by sending those minutes out in a timely fashion after the meeting, it allows those decisions to get out there, the work needing to happen to get done in an efficient and effective manner. So if I could give you one takeaway, as far as getting something out timely, it is your minutes from a meeting. I also suggest that you utilize a secure cloud-based storage for your minutes. I know, scary thing for a lot of us. And staff that aren't necessarily comfy with clouds or drives or whatever, you can do the research and find something secure for your organization and stuff. But having it accessible, especially in this day and age where we're all working different hours, different times, having it readily accessible and not having to have people go back through and hunt through their emails to look for minutes, have people resend their minutes and stuff, having people readily accessible to marketing collateral, having a cloud-based storage for your stuff is a super important thing for good reporting and allowing that information to flow backwards and forwards. And again, this is something that we can give you guys some suggestions on and stuff, and using templates and everything as Hillary alluded to last time for communicating out stuff. So good governance practices, if you're doing good governance, you will have good reporting. So they're kind of tied hand in hand. So Chris, I think I have a poll after this one as well. Okay, after seeing this slide, how do you feel about your organization? Do you feel that you guys report well, that you would give yourself a pat on the back? Woohoo! You give yourself a B, you get it done. You know, maybe you just give yourself a D, you passed, you know, but, or you need some serious help. Again, I don't want to scare anyone on this one, but as Hillary alluded to last week, your minutes can be legal action documents. So your minutes are very, very important that you do that and do those well and timely because they are, in most cases, if you think about it, whenever just something as simple as changing the names on your bank accounts, your minutes are generally required for you to go about and do that. So that is an example where it is a legal document. Awesome. Coming in, it's looking pretty, I'm pretty proud of you guys. I know a few of these groups have gone through the Avis boot camp on minutes and agendas. So I am a real stickler on this one. Chris, you can go ahead. Thank you. On this one, 55%, you give yourself a B. And then I love this. Awesome. That is well over 80 some odd % that you guys feel that you're doing well. And that's super great and super, super important on these. Just another tidbit on this one. Those of you who have gone through minutes and stuff with me, I like to do my minutes and then pull out of them all the action items and put them right front and center in the email and stuff, just so people are very aware and it's right there. It's the old Intel in me. We call them action requireds. and stuff, but I like to pull them out of the minutes and put them front and center in the email so people are aware of what they are and what they have to do before the next meeting. Okay, now I promised I would get into, you guys brought these up in November. I promised I would get into some of your common challenges you brought up. One of them was how to use succession plan in your organization. Guys, it's in the name, the word plan. Doing succession planning is a proactive action. Every year or every other year, as you do your strategic plan, not only do you talk about your program, but you need to talk about your people. Because if you do not have a good leadership base, you will not have a successful program to carry on. So everybody loves your mission and they love your organization. So having that open and honest communication about, I'm about ready to retire and stuff. And I am going to dial back a little bit and spend some time with my family. So having those open communications and stuff, and most of your people have given people years of experience, but by having those open and honest communication, it makes your person feel valued who's served on your leadership, and it allows them to realize that program is going to move forward. Always be looking, if you are a board that has term limits, always be looking 6 months in advance of when that term expires. That board president should be having a communication with those people who are going to expire saying, if they're terming out, obviously, do you have any ideas of who, might be a good replacement for you? If their term is just expiring and they can re-up, are you going to reconsider, doing another term with us? Have that conversation early. Inventory, know what you have at your table and what gaps exist. I think it is super important up front to have all people who apply for leaderships and committees to do an application. And we have some samples. It's an online application where that way you can see what they're bringing to the table. And it allows the other people in your organization to share, and learn about this new person that's coming in. So many of us, let's be honest, we tap friends, we tap other community members that you're close to come and join boards with you and stuff. And it's just a good way to really inventory what's being brought to the table. What are you missing? And so I have all new groups that I bring up, I have them do an application process. It allows you to grab their work history, their volunteer history. I have one gentleman that I had no idea he was retired Cal OES until he did his application. And somebody knows exactly who I'm speaking about. And he had written grants. I'm like, he never shared it. He was very quiet about it, but it allows us to have that discussion. Always, always, always be upfront as you're courting people to fulfill your succession plan around your time commitment and their responsibilities and terms and agreements. Always have that conversation. We meet this many times a month. Oh, and we do a little bit offline too. Having those documented roles and responsibilities from earlier is a great way to allow people to see this is what I'm going to be responsible for. Again, strong onboarding leads to effective succession. So if you do some of the stuff that Hillary mentioned last week, as far as onboarding, assigning somebody who's already on a committee to a new person, oh my goodness, the big one is just taking 30 minutes and going over your Google Drive or helping somebody find stuff. Just allowing them to feel effective as quickly as possible will be so much more fulfilling for them when it comes to succession planning. Oh, Chris, I think I have a quiz after this one too. Do I? Let's see, I do. How does succession planning work for your organization? So you serve or volunteer until you don't want to anymore. You have term limits and a calendar of service, but don't really stick to it. We abide by our bylaws and have a schedule. I'm not really sure what we do. And if you have something else, please share it in the chat. They are coming in. We'll share it here in a second. Looks like a fair amount of you are doing your bylaws and you have a schedule. which is really good. Even if you don't have a 501c3 and you, for example, are an expendable fund at the foundation, I still highly advise as a policy for your organization to set internal limits. And, as far as you're going to serve on this executive committee for 2 years, even if it's not captured in a hardcore bylaw and stuff that's required for a 501, you want other ways to capture it. Okay, Chris, if you want to share this one. 27%. You serve or volunteer until you don't want to anymore. I love your guys' passion. I really, really do. But let that sit with you as far as for the long-term success of your organization and stuff. Is that the right thing? I will admit, we had an organization that I stepped onto the board of just 3 years ago, and that they were not abiding by their term limits. And everybody was staying. They loved it, but they had never infused any new blood. And then all of a sudden, they were done. Everybody was exhausted. They wanted it to be over. Well, because no one new had come to the table in probably about 7 or 8 years, there was no succession plan. And so all they could do was go to the client, the organization that they served ultimately, and say, we're done, and that we're going to close the doors unless something dramatic happens. It was a scramble. They saved it. But that is not, that was not the best way to go about it. So now this organization does have term limits. They are abiding by it. And they are having those discussions on a yearly basis as far as what's going on, because it was a very scary movement. It was an organization that had been in the community for coming up on 15 years. And it was going to go bye-bye in the matter of just 6 months, because they had never, ever considered a change. Thank you, Chris, on that. The second challenge you guys wanted me to talk about was motivation. How do you motivate people to get involved on committees? Well, first, you start with valuing their time. That's kind of like me today, and this meeting is, I am going to value your time. I am going to get you done on time. If you hold a meeting that constantly goes over time, that is not valuing your committee members' time. So at least be real and be realistic and adhere to the expectations that you have outlined for them and stuff. And if things change, have an open and honest communication. You will see on my next slide that volunteering, it's almost work, life, volunteer with this group here. It's a three-way balance, not a two-way balance. And you need to evaluate their time and ensure that. Train or onboard for success and manage their frustrations and stuff, especially that first year. Setting them up and making things efficient and effective as you onboard them makes them more motivated. They won't be frustrated. They know where to find things. They know who to talk to. They know the structure. They know their roles and responsibilities and stuff. That is the hardest thing, is if you onboard somebody and then they are like, I have no idea what's going on here. In fact, I know a person who was just onboarded to a fairly particular big board here in our county. And they're like, shouldn't I get a binder or a training or something? And I was like, yeah, you need to ask and stuff about that. And it was a very, very established organization and stuff. And she is one board meeting in and is extremely frustrated. And you do not want to see that. So you want them to feel motivated and valued. Play to their strengths. And this is not just leadership. So again, play to their strengths by giving someone a place in an organization where they and the organization will be fulfilled and successful. Just because they're a warm body, don't slot them somewhere where you have a hole. They will feel valued and motivated if you put them in a place where their skill set's going to lean. Maybe you give them a little bit of a growth by pushing them a little bit, but by giving them a place where their skill set is going to play, they are going to feel motivated and successful. And this may be, and this is the one I didn't speak to in here, I like to start all future board members off on committees. This allows them to learn about the organization. It allows them, again, to fill that spot where they be fulfilled and they can be successful, and allows them to join the organization. If I have the ability to, I never put someone straight onto a board. I will have them serve on a committee first and then move up to a board position later, unless you just happen to have someone who has a lot of board experience. Value their inputs. Ask, listen, follow up with them and stuff. That's a super important one. Show appreciation. Thank them and thank them again. You can never do that enough. It can be a simple, drop them a note card. It can be a shout out on social media if they're okay with it, and stuff. You cannot thank your committee members enough. Chris, can you hit me with a poll? So this is one just kind of changing it up a little bit as far as if we were able to help you guys out in some of this space, what do you guys think you would need at this point? Keeping you guys on your toes a little bit here. And I think we're going to see the hot one, Bill, that we saw before, which is help us find people. Help us find those people out in the community that are willing to assist us in play. Would you like us to come in and look at your structure and your workflow and give you some feedback? Review, take a look at how you document minutes and communicate stuff and give you some feedback. Observe and critique your leadership in your meetings. I know Bill discussed this one a little bit yesterday as far as who runs your board meeting, or last week, who runs your board meetings? Is it your ED or is it your board president? And who should it be? Are you doing that right? That is a really, really good question. I love the year I became an ED of an organization, and before me, the ED had always ran the meetings, and I'm like, this isn't my board. I'm like, I work for you. This is yours. And so the first thing I did with that board was I'm like, I am not the president. I do not run the meetings. All right, Chris, if you can stop this one. So Bill, the same request came out, needing some help finding those leadership and committee members was the big one on this one, as well as doing some observations. Awesome. Versatility. This was another one that came out as the thoughts as far as, how do I get more versatility into my organization? Again, you start with an inventory. You inventory your skills that you have at the table and what are your needs. Communicate your needs. If no one knows how, I must have wrote this sentence without enough coffee. If no one knows how you're going to fill it, how are you going to communicate it? I know so many organizations that just are like, well, do you know anybody? Do you know anybody? Our county, again, is growing so much. Just putting the fact that you have a board opening out on social media, you never know who you might hear from. So if you don't tell people you need somebody and you guys are all scrambling trying to do it yourself, nobody knows. So whether you call us here at the foundation, do you know someone and stuff, or the bigger thing is just, you're a community organization. We've had so many people move into our community since COVID from the Bay Area and stuff. There is a huge untapped new group of people here in our community that are out there on social media. They are getting to know our community, but they may not know exactly you and your organization. So by putting it out there, if you're comfortable that you need a board member or you're looking for a web designer, there is a whole new group that has moved into our county that you never know, if you utilize some of these other ways to communicate, that you might pick up somebody versus the old school, hey, do you know of somebody? Hey, just the word of mouth thing. Leveraging social media is huge. Leverage your community-based entities like your chambers of commerces, your service organizations. These are people who are already involved in giving, whether it be our businesses or our, Kiwanis, our Rotarians, our stuff like that, as far as who might have people who have a particular interest in your thing. Leverage those groups, because those groups have a wide breadth of people and skills and stuff that they may know somebody, and they are extremely connected in our community from all the service that they already do. So leveraging those are super, super important. Again, make your organization accessible, especially to millennials and those other generations. That is really, really big. So if you aren't using social media yet, you should probably consider it. So you can leverage those groups that are growing by leaps and bounds in our community. Hold an open forum. Even if it's over Zoom right now, hold an open house, hold an open meeting, allow some people to come in and observe your mission or your work, you know, and have a discussion about it. How can they get to know you and stuff? That one-on-one is something that is so craved right now, even if it's over a video like this. So by holding some kind of open forum and inviting the community to a virtual open house where you share some of the stories and you share your leadership and stuff, you never know who you might get with that. So that's some ways that I would suggest as far as how you consider growing more versatility in your organization. Chris, I don't think I have another poll. I think I'm good. Let's see if he throws one up. No, I don't. My fourth challenge that you guys brought up, staff versus committees. This is where roles and responsibilities come in place, because people were like, well, how do you keep, if you have staff, how do you keep them in their lanes versus committees? By ensuring that roles and responsibilities are clear and articulated. Prevent that lane creep. Ensure that staff knows, you know, staff is responsible for this, volunteers are responsible for this, and stuff. And that's how this is done. A big one on this one is, especially with staff and volunteers, is again, being respectful of people's time. Volunteers, we usually don't start working until we get off of our regular jobs at 5 o'clock. So we'll start sending emails and stuff to possibly staff and stuff, you know, at 5 and 6 o'clock in the evening. But you need to remember that they are staff and you need to respect their time. So if you do not get an email back from them until the next morning and then that they are in the office, you need to be respectful of that. So just establishing those roles and responsibilities and those clear, you know, boundaries as far as, you know, who is staff and who is volunteers. You know, remember, both staff and volunteers are people with jobs and with families and with hobbies. Everyone has the right to balance their work, their volunteer, and their life and stuff. So that is a big thing. And I think the biggest one, though, is having those roles and responsibilities and who are the decision makers in certain cases. That one, if we go back to early on in our slides. So resources, a lot of them that you guys saw last week, as far as if you're needing different documents and stuff. The big one I added on this week is the Stanford Law School Mills Legal Clinic. That one has a lot of documents as far as, and even different entities. If you're a school-based organization or if you are a veterans-based organization, different documents. Again, you guys will get a copy of this and you'll get all the hyperlinks and stuff too. So you don't have to write too much like mad right now on this one. So you can see where you are. And then, so I will stop the share and I will go to my staff. Kathy, Bill, anybody have anything I should address?
Just real briefly, just a small note, I put it in the chat, is around UBI, unrelated business income. And this is an area that a lot of nonprofits tend to drift into. So if you have not reviewed your determination letter from the Internal Revenue Service, I suggest you go back and take a look at it. They tend to be very specific, and they will they're giving you your 501c recognition based upon a particular program. So say if you're doing alcohol and other drug program as rehabilitation, that's what it's going to say in the determination letter. If that same organization starts to sell jewelry, that is considered unrelated business income. It is outside the scope of what the Internal Revenue Service determined your mission was to be, and that is taxable income. So be very careful. It could be something as simple as selling flowers on the street corner as a fundraiser. If it starts to fall out of your primary mission, you do need to check with the Internal Revenue Service or give us a call at the foundation to see if it's something that's permissible. So the fundraiser was a bad analogy. It's really as if you're going into it. So the flower selling would be a business. So it'd be a business component of your organization. So fundraisers, they're not going to tax you on UBI. It's if it's a business.
I see one up here that Kathy answered a little bit that I'm going to answer a little further. How do we start having staff? We would love to have staff one day, and how do you fundraise for that? The biggest thing, and this is a grant tip and trick, and Kathy, if you can think about if this one's in your presentation upcoming or not, is whenever you're writing a grant to do a program, you should include your staff time for that, not just the bells and whistles of, for instance, a good one I'll use Ag in the Classroom as an example of, us and our farm day that we do where we have, like 3,000 kiddos at the fairgrounds and deliver all this programs all day long for the kids. Well, we have a staff person that does that. And so whenever we build in the cost of the fairgrounds and the cost of the insurance and the cost of the food that day, we include staff in our grants when we apply. It costs us this much in staff time to deliver that. And you include in that, if it is a staff that gets benefits, you include their benefits as well in that. So, and that's one thing that we are really, really working with our organizations outside of ourselves that do granting here in the community, is understanding that it is more than just the pencil and the pen to deliver that program. It is the person too. And so whenever they are funding a grant for a program, it also includes the staff to make that happen. And you even go high enough up that it includes your overhead of your organization. So it not only took my coordinator for Farm Day, but it took the executive director managing that person. So you even back it up and take a little bit of that executive director's pay and you build it into that grant request. And any good grantor would be aware that it costs more than the pencils and the pens. There is staff behind that need to be funded as well. So if you are not familiar with, and there are some little calculations as far as good percentages and stuff to do that, but it is very much expected that you would build that into a grant.
And I'm going to chime in on what Avis has articulated. Program is only run by people. Program usually does not run itself. So as part of your grant writing, you should be incorporating that cost of the people to be able to provide the program. And Andrew asked a question about what is a good administrative overhead. Should it be around 20 to 30%? And I would say it needs to be whatever it costs to have an excellent program. So the tradition in nonprofits has been for many years that we tend to cut our value. And I think we need to change that.
Let's see, do we have resources on forming committees and applications available? Yes, as Chris puts together this package to send out to you guys after the fact, I will add in some of those samples. We actually were just talking about starting a resource library on our website because we're finding, especially with the addition of Kathy and I this last year, we've got a lot of templates and stuff. So that's a really, really good one. Kathy, anything else? I'm scrolling up, I'm not seeing. Lots on the board training. I think Bill,
I got most of them. If we didn't answer a question in the chat, could you maybe put it back in there because there were a lot. And Nikki, you just asked what government grants. That's next week's session, and you can always Google or go onto the US Gov site to look for grants, but that's what we'll be talking about next week.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'll go through the chat, you guys, and see if there's anything that you, is it the idea that committees meet outside of regular board meetings? Yes. In fact, usually I set up my calendar such that all the committees meet prior to a board meeting. That way, then they can report to a board meeting, and then it becomes a cycle. It becomes a cycle that they report out, they get any direction they need, it comes back in. So a monthly round cycle and stuff is what I generally do, or if it's a quarterly, depend on, but you always create a circle so that reporting can go up and can go down. I'll make sure, like I just saw hers, I'm sure Kathy will touch on that one next week and stuff. So, so guys, thank you so much. Here I am, respectful of time. 5 minutes to go. Thank you so much for being here again. The next one will be next week by Kathy and Lois. It will be more about development, grants, donors, the whole 9 yards. So again, if you aren't the right person, you're welcome to send the right person here. But next week they will be covering that. So make sure you're registered, have your Zoom link and stuff, and are ready to go. And again, Chris will wrap this up in a package for those of you that are new. Basically, come probably Monday of next week, you'll get a package that has a copy of the video, copy of the presentation, and a copy of the chat, all in there, so you can leverage it if you didn't write fast enough during today's meeting. Session.
I did, just before Avis wraps this up really quickly. I just looked down to see how many people were participating. There was 76, now it's 74. This is a powerhouse of this community. You're as nonprofits, the work that you do. You just think about, there's 76 individuals on this call that serve community. That is amazing and very powerful. So thank you for what you do.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. Stay safe, stay healthy, and see a lot of you next week. Take care.